second scripture reading for this morning comes to us from the 15th chapter of the Gospel according to John. This is the first Sunday in a new worship series for us. We'll be spending several weeks here in John's Gospel, specifically around this 15th chapter in the idea of abiding. It's the theme for the upcoming General Assembly out in Des Moines, Iowa, and it's one worth spending some time with, if we can abide to abide with the abiding. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you, just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. May God's blessing rest upon the experiences of Scripture on this morning, flowing out for all of us. May it guide the meditations of our hearts and the words of my lips. I am the true vine. Jesus is talking to his disciples, and this is part of John's extended upper room experience. In John's gospel, Jesus has a lot of monologues, lots of long dissertations that go in. I was half tempted to have the second scripture reading start with Genesis 1 and end with Revelation 12, but that seemed excessive. But in John's gospel, Jesus has these long conversations with the disciples, and here in this upper room experience, in the week that will bring us to the cross, Jesus sits with his disciples and he is delivering a series of important lessons for the followers of Christ. John, as a gospel writer, is writing to a people of faith that are in need of these words. Writing to a community of faith that is going through painful separation as they are leaving the houses of worship that they have known, as they are being separated and cut off in some way, shape, or form. And so John makes sure to include these words from Jesus. And in case it didn't come through, one of the big words in this 11-verse section is abide. Abide. It comes up a lot to abide. And when I was growing up, the only abiding I ever heard of was someone saying, I can't abide. And so I had some sense of the negative use of the word, but not necessarily the positive one. And I had to spend some time considering, what does this abide mean, this Greek term that Jesus is using, or that John, in recording Jesus' words, is using. What is this talking about, this abide? I'm setting aside the cleansing and the pruning language right now. It's the same word, actually, in Greek, to be cleansed and to be pruned. Just, throw that out there for you. But I want to spend time with the abiding, the abide. Because abide carries with it several different things. This Greek word that John is having Jesus use, the translation of whatever Jesus is talking to the disciples about. And it begins first with a being in place. something that I struggle with, if you've watched me. They tried to give me a lectern with a microphone at Hiram. I didn't last long. I was all over the place, a wanderer. But this abide term that Jesus is using has a sense of remaining in place, to sojourn, to tarry. Don't depart. And we know the disciples listened well to this because after the resurrection, Jesus finds them in the same room that they were in when he told them, I am the vine. Good disciples. We listen and follow directions. Jesus says, stay here, I stay here. My little square foot. And if you need to find me or want help, you just come to me. I'm right here in my little square foot. I'm abiding in my place. Because that's part of what abiding is, right? To be in place. But Jesus is telling them to abide in the same conversation that he is saying, I'm leaving. I'm going ahead of you, and where I'm going, you are not yet ready to come. I am going to prepare a place for you. So when Jesus speaks of abiding, yes, Jesus is speaking of a geographical location, but it is not an immediate geographical location. It is a call to remain in connection to Jesus, but it is also a SAT word, eschatological hope, looking ahead, because Jesus is going to prepare a place. So abide, part of it has a physical location meaning to it, but abide doesn't end there. Abide also means to be held continually, over time. So abide has a physical space element and it has a temporal element to it. It's got a time element, to be held continually over time. To be in that place of deepest love. We might be able to draw to mind a memory of what that is like. That place of deepest love. When I graduated from Hiram in 99 is when I graduated, it was very painful to leave, right? Because 4 magical years spent there. And then I went back for a reunion, and that was painful as well. Because I thought it was the place where I was abiding. And I have learned that it was not the place. I have great fond memories of the place, the hill there in northeast Ohio, but it was that sense of being held, that great community that I was part of, those people where I found a place, a sense of deepest love, that congregation that was adopting students that they knew at best they had you for 5 years. It was a 4-year program, but at best they could have you for 5 years. And they loved you all the same, knowing that you were going to leave, because Hiram is a place where 99.99% of people who go to school there leave. It's a village of 450 people. If we all stayed, it wouldn't fit. And yet we were held and we were deeply loved in that place, and that is the abiding, to be in this continual, temporal, time-based way of understanding how we're loved. But that's not the end of the abiding that Jesus talks about when he keeps using this abide term. It is more than just a place and a time, a state of being something. It also means that we should continue to be, not perish, last or endure. Hang in there, right? You've seen the poster of the cat hanging on the tree limb? It's a great poster. Cute cat. Nice tree limb. Hang in there. To abide is to endure in some way. And for John's, the community of faith that John is speaking to, this is a very important message because they are in the midst of incredible persecution. They're feeling this painful separation. And when we go through pain and suffering, sometimes it just seems easier to not deal with the thing that is hurting us so much. And so we do not persist in it. We don't endure in it. And that is a very understandable human reaction. Now, it might be hard for us to imagine today because the church is not persecuted in the same way. We are dealing with apathy, which is a whole different ballgame. But Jesus tells the disciples to abide, to continue to be, to last, to hang in there, to be connected to the vine that you might continue in your growth. For to be disconnected is to stunt the growth and to wither in some way. So all of these things are wrapped up in the sense of abiding, this being in place, to tarry, to wait, to continue to be present, continue to reside in this place of deepest love, and to be connected, to stay connected. And Jesus uses this wonderful grapevine image, something that the ancient Eastern Mediterranean world knew really well, the disciples knew really well. I had a Concord grapevine in my backyard growing up. We've got one in the new house. Not all of us know Concord grapes, so let me throw a couple other images out there. We are to hang on and grow like kudzu. Yeah, like English ivy. Yeah, that's how we're supposed to be. Hang in there. Be in our place. Be attached. Grow. Flourish. But ivy and kudzu are lacking something, a certain je ne sais quoi. Yeah, fruit. Yeah, it's lacking grapes. If you go to a kudzu and look for something to eat, you're going to be sorely disappointed. So Jesus talks about this importance of bearing fruit. The whole section begins with this idea of pruning and cleansing and bearing fruit, and comes back around to this idea of being connected. And being connected means being fruitful. And this is the kick in the pants when it comes to abiding. The fruit that is born is not for the vine, and it is not for the branches. Your grapevine does not benefit from the grapes that are grown. It just isn't. We're told in the gospel that God is blessed by the bounty. God is glorified by the fruitfulness that takes place. And we are reminded that the fruit is for others. It's not for ourselves. We are already abiding. We're already attached. We're already bearing all the goodness that comes from being part of a life of Christ. Thanks be to God. And then the fruit that emerges is for those that are passing by. For those who are in need of sustenance. So that God may be glorified in the realm rippling out. Grapes growing unattended, like kudzu in English ivy, like wisteria. So the abiding that we are called to do, this invitation, is not directly connected to bearing fruit for our own good. The invitation for us as church today is to abide, to be in a physical space, to be held continually, to be in that place of deepest love, and to bear fruit for the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.